All right, we'll call the meeting. Hello?
Psst, it's not working.
Mike's. While you're checking that out, call the meeting of General Government and Finance Committee to order at 5:31. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with Wisconsin statute section 19.83 and 19.84 in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. Roll call shows all members present except for trustee Pieper. With that, citizen input for, okay, we'll move to citizen input. Anybody would like to come up, please, where's the podium?
Where's the podium?
Yeah,
What was in here, I wonder? It moved everything.
I got-
We had the carpets cleaned.
I thought you might have had the carpets cleaned. It looked like that. Okay,
Okay.
we got an audience.
Good evening, Sarah.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Sarah Larson, Butternut Road. I want to touch on a couple items, specifically the RFP for professional services. In reading the background and saying that it would take 18 to 24 months to navigate the RFP process, that isn't acceptable. And there are a lot of resources available for doing RFPs, and I think it could be accomplished in a much shorter time frame. And specifically concerning RFP for our legal representation, I believe that's something that really should be driven by the board and not administration, because ultimately you have to answer for what is taking place. And that legal representation is one of the most critical things to the village. The next item is the resolution authorizing debt, the 1.2 million for Glenwood Park. I'm curious if this is the total project cost or if this is a cost overrun and why those funds wouldn't have been approved previously. Because I live in that neighborhood and I see what a cluster this has been. Pretty much the work started last fall. They didn't finish those water lines and the pavers came in and paved. And a week later, they were on the roads with big equipment cutting them up again. And now they were supposed to start paving prior to Labor Day. They didn't show up until last Thursday. Now they've paved our street and they cut away at all of the driveways. All of us have like a 2-foot spot at the end of our driveway that has not been filled in. They did not come to work on Friday. And so there's about like a 2-inch gap between the manhole and the height of the pavement. Same thing with the water inlet. They're probably going to have to come and put a neck on it, meaning they're going to cut into the brand new asphalt. And it just, and I know that Concord Road, when I had talked to the Public Works Director, as it is, they have to put another coat on there because they had paved that last fall and then cut into it like a week later. So I guess I'm thinking if this is additional money that we're paying, normally there are performance criteria in contracts, and shouldn't that the contractor who is doing that water work be on the hook for some of this, or whether it is a combination between the paving company and whoever is performing that water work? But to see $1.2 million, I'd be questioning it. And then the other item is the fire department administrative manager pay. Generally, I am all for recognizing individuals' contributions, but knowing that it is budget time, this could be accomplished through a performance review at the time that the new budget is established versus coming and asking for these additional funds. We've already agreed to a police and fire referendum and those additional dollars. So to see all of these additional requests in these meetings for more money, I don't think is sitting right with the taxpayers. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else come forward? All right, if not, we will move on to consent agenda, the minutes of the meeting of August 19th, 2024.
Move approval?
I'll second for discussion, please.
All right, we have a motion to approve the minutes. Discussion, Trustee Miller.
Yes, just wanted to make a note on the minutes under page 2, new business. We had a presentation by Economic Development Washington County that basically failed. We had internet problems or presentation problems, so it wasn't completed. I don't believe that I got all of this information. And when Chairman Rick Miller stopped the presentation, it wasn't complete, and we said we'd like to invite him back to the next GGF meeting. And here we are, and where
We're at with that is we're meeting with Christian on Thursday, President Walter, myself, Administrator Krecklow to reschedule that. And it might go to the village board rather than GGF. We're not quite sure yet. So that is in the works, but it wasn't wasn't enough time to get it into this one. And honestly, I apologized for not giving the EDWC enough time for that night. But we will schedule it again, and there will be a full presentation from them.
Okay, and then Administrator Krecklow, can we get a copy of the presentation?
I think he,
Did it,
I think
did
we
it
got
send
it.
it?
did we?
Yeah,
I-
pretty sure we got it.
I have to search
Mine
again,
too, because I didn't see it either.
Okay.
But may I?
double check, make sure it was sent. Thank you.
I do agree with Trustee Miller that there should at least be some indication in the agenda that that presentation was cut short due to technical difficulties or something,
Could you?
as
amend-
opposed to making it look like everything went smooth and we learned all this. I agree.
Understood. That's a good point.
So
You want to make a motion to that?
We'll make a motion to amend it to indicate that the economic development presentation was cut short and due to technical difficulties and would be rescheduled.
I'll second.
All right, we have an amendment to the original motion. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Back to the original motion to approve the minutes. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. We will now move on to unfinished business. Item A, discussion on RFPs for professional services. And I will hand this over to Administrator Krecklow to begin the discussion on this.
Thank you. One of the performance objectives that the village board set for me for this year was to improve reporting and tracking of contracts at the village, and then also, and that I think we've accomplished with some of the reports that have been before GGF, and then also to present the board with some potential policy language changes related to how we issue contracts and what those processes are like. And that's something that I'm still working on and plan to have for this committee in the next couple of months. There's also been a lot of conversation, I think, in part due to the improved reporting about when we go to RFP, which contracts should go to RFP. And there have been, in various board meetings and committee meetings, not only GGF, but other committees, some suggestions about, well, this contract, we should go out for an RFP or that contract. And I think one of the things that would help me as the administrator and staff would be get some guidance and direction from GGF on prioritizing, which contracts you would prefer to prioritize, to go through an RFP process, and then work through some scheduling and timing for that. So I think it's, I see this kind of a starting point with some conversation, some discussion about which contracts you'd be most interested in seeing. And I can come back again at a future meeting with a schedule of how long I think each one might take, and how we can work all of those contracts into a process for going through RFPs.
Yeah, I think the main thing is for professional services, it's been a while since we've gone out on several of these for RFP. And I would like to see, personally, I would like to see that we do go out for an RFP on these and then have a cycle. So it might be a 3-year or a 2-year. I'm not sure what that's logical cycle would be yet, but something to that effect on the professional service contracts. Is there discussion?
Comment.
Trustee Commissioner?
What are we calling professional service? So the cleaning contract is not professional service?
Yeah.
We have so many different contracts. I just want to make sure I'm,
Yeah, the professional services contracts that we have, well, and there's
insurance, investments, that type of thing? Okay.
investments, some of the others that have come up.
Our
legal
tech
services,
support?
Tech support,
Okay.
audit services,
Okay.
or others that have been mentioned.
Legal.
Also
Yeah.
falling in that category, engineering services would be professional services.
Okay.
Inspection, building inspection would fall under
Okay. I do think that every situation is different. I mean, sometimes there's one game in town that's just the best at what it does. And maybe in the case of Ayers or something, and they have a long history with us. However, things such as was mentioned, our village attorney, and don't get me wrong, I love him, but that's been going on for like 10 years now.
longer than that.
Time to, yeah, I mean, nothing should extend.
About 10 years.
I don't think anything should, professional service contract without at least a look and bring it before the committee to say, yeah, we could go out, but we want to really keep this person because of this, or that. But 10 years is too long. I mean, I think 3 years is too short, 4 years is too short. But anybody we've had for like 5 years, we should take a look at and at least bring it to the committee and say, hey, what do you think? That would be my opinion. But I think definitely legal services is overdue.
I agree. I've requested a review of legal services last 2 months, as well as EDWC to go over their contract, at least to take a look at the contract so that we know what we're up against. And then as far as RFPs, I see the DPW doing RFPs all the time. And as needed, it seems like they must have some kind of a rotation. And we just have 2 contracts coming up now for the uniforms or whatever they are and something else. There was a 3-year and a 5-year contract that we approved, that was approved under Public Works. So contracts are being made all the time. So under what jurisdiction would GGF do it? Professional services, I think, is really important. And I think that this committee should be doing that. It's my opinion.
If I could say, we have increased the number of RFPs that we've been issuing, pretty significantly. And Public Works was one of the areas of emphasis this year to try to get more RFPs out there, to try to formalize some of the processes and, getting them into Tyler Munis, and the staff has really been helpful and cooperative on that. And so one of the things that's clear coming through is legal services is a priority. And what I can do is take a look at maybe coming back with a more specific schedule of what that might look like. Legal services might be something we could end up doing this year yet.
Good.
I like it.
Yeah, it's and have something in place potentially by January. Some of the others, and where we have to consider the timing, for example, audit services, is one where we have been with Baker Tilly for a long time, and that is, that probably goes back over 20 years. And that's not, it's not a best practice. It's not a recommended practice. It's also not that unusual for communities to have a long-time auditor, especially
Mhm.
communities that are, Germantown size and smaller. But there, the timing is important. I know the finance staff has already started conversations because one of the board's other priorities is getting the audit and the ACFR done by June. The finance department is already planning work with Baker and Tilly in November in order to meet that timeline. So that might be one, if that's a priority for the board, we might not want to do an RFP until July. And I think those are two of the bigger ones that I've heard discussion on. We may be due to look at the IT contract again. I think that was 3 or 4, we're going on 4 years now that we've had capital data in place, and take a look at going back out to RFP with that. And I don't, if there were other suggestions that you have, that make sure that those would get on that list as well.
I think the overlying thing is legal services by the end of the year.
Okay.
Maybe we can discuss that at the next meeting. Do you think you could have something ready by November?
Yeah.
Okay.
I could do that.
A typical RFP, well, it's been a while, so I've never seen an RFP for for legal services. What does that look like, or what does it take to prepare something like that?
It's another area where it's common for municipalities to stick with the same firm for longer periods of time because there's a lot of institutional knowledge. And that transition can be, you lose some things in that transition. But it is something that municipalities go through. And it's not a particularly complex RFP. I think the primary thing that we want to make sure of is that we're getting somebody who has experience in municipal government. And then the other question is, are we talking about like general legal advisory services or and municipal court services, or are we separating those? Or are we doing those as one contract like they are now? That's another question that.
That is a good question. I wasn't even thinking of municipal court for that.
And they are right now, and for a long time, they've been handled by the same law firm. So the other thing, I have a little bit of information on rates. I think it's just to give the committee a heads up. I think it's likely that the hourly rates would go up in an RFP. If we go through an RFP process, we're quite a bit lower than what other municipalities are paying per hour for their legal services. So that may be the case in a number of these processes we go through, that we might end up paying more, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we shouldn't go through the process.
Yeah, I think we're looking, Jan.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I think we're looking for, we have a database here. There is information stored. I don't think we'd hire someone that wasn't reputable, and we have to have somebody that's municipal, that could handle both, or it could be separated. The municipal court could be separated from the legal advice, because the legal advice is in the evening. Municipal court is held, I think it's twice a week, or month, or is that every month or every week? I don't remember, but it's on the calendar every month. So there are quite a few things that we can do, and if we don't have the current contract, then we don't understand what the duties are and how in-depth they are. There are a lot of things that came up in my tenure, which isn't very long, that there are state statutes in writing some of these things that are already written that we absolutely have to use the same language. And that should be known by most attorneys that do municipal work. So I think that it is worthwhile taking a look at, and that's what I've requested for the last 2 months.
Trustee Kaminsky.
Historically, Steve, were you here when we hired Brian? I can't remember.
No,
Because it was really interesting. That's what,
I wasn't here either.
but it was, we had, I think, 3 candidates ultimately. One was a very large firm from downtown. Who we never would have been able to, they were trying to fit themselves into this realm. And then they said, but we won't have somebody at each meeting. We'll just be on the phone. I mean, you're gonna be amazed at what's gonna come out of the woodwork on this. People who want the work, but aren't willing to do what Brian does. And we do need somebody sitting in a chair at these meetings. And you're gonna find maybe there's a couple of firms out there that are really willing to do it. That's my bet, but we'll see. It still has to be done. We have to see what's out there.
well, I think that's good feedback, and I can take that and do 2 things. One is work on a draft RFP for legal services to get that back before the committee as soon as possible, and then also to look at scheduling some other professional services RFPs and what that schedule might look like, getting further maybe into 2025.
Okay. And as far as the EDWC, we already have a contract with them. You can provide that contract, right?
Yeah, and I think
Chris can do it.
I think we have, and then I can send that again.
And the entire contract sent to it. There was an addition, there was an amendment, and I never got the whole thing. So if you could send the
This
whole thing.
amendment, when?
It was voted on in one of the village board meetings.
We did have this spring, there was a non-dollar amount amendment, but it was changed to their subscription. It's technically a subscription that allows us to, if we don't utilize all of the resources that are covered under the subscription in
carries over.
2024, we can apply the value of those resources towards the 2025 subscription. That one is, I think, less amenable to an RFP process because what Economic Development Washington County does is pretty unique. And, we couldn't contract, for example, with Milwaukee County or Ozaukee County's equivalent to that. And it's not something a private sector firm offers either. So it's, probably the closest would be like the M7. And again, they're an overarching regional economic development organization. I don't think that they would do the same things for the village that Economic Development Washington County does.
Let's make a quick
Yeah,
comment.
go ahead.
I agree with Steve. I think anybody that's been here longer term and has seen development in this village totally supports EWC. I mean, I do. I think Christian is very smart. I remember when he came on board there, and he's done a great job and is very, very highly respected throughout the county by businesses and corporations. So whether I see a contractor or not, I really don't care. I really think they're doing great.
All right, so you have the direction for that. Anything else on RFPs? We'll revisit this next month.
Yeah.
For
I just have a question. What did you mean by engineer? Now we have a full complement of an engineering department.
Well, we still outsource some services.
Some of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
And right now it's Grave. No, it's
Well, we use we use quite a few engineering firms. Grafe is working on the public safety facilities feasibility study, and still doing inspection services on the new DPW facility, wrapping that up. We have Foth doing a lot of the water engineering that needs to be done. You may remember a presentation, a village board meeting or 2 ago about well number 12 and some of those issues. That was Foth Engineering that did that. We use R.A. Smith for some of the sewer work, the design, and Rukin and Milky does some work. They recently did the sewer capacity analysis. So for specialized projects, we're utilizing a variety of engineering
do
firms.
we have anyone on retainer?
Not like we did when we had the positions vacant.
Okay.
Where at that point we had,
So it's really based on project.
yeah, where there's specialized engineering, expertise that's necessary, or where it would, or where we just, some of these projects, some of these larger projects, take multiple engineers over a 6-month period of time to complete. So, we even though we're fully staffed now, we still don't have the capacity for those large projects.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to move on to item 2 or B, shortening village board meetings. We started this discussion last month. Started at the village board, got pushed back to GGF. There was some discussion here on that and recommendations. In talking to Trustee Hudson and what he had said at the last GGF meeting, it's more about this committee making some suggestions back to the village board. And what would those be? Go ahead, trustee.
I
Kaminsky,
think,
you can start.
I was pretty vociferous on this last time. And I do think that we have to have, I like the 2-bite rule. I think it should be tested and tried out with the president being able to override that on critical issues. But I think it keeps us all much more aware. I mean, look at the people who come up here have 3 minutes and look at all the information we get when they come up here. Because they come prepared, totally prepared. And we have to come to every meeting totally prepared mentally with our questions and with any problem we have, any hurdle we have to go over. And then I should be able to state my case within 3 minutes or less on just about any issue. I'm not saying that we should be limited to time, but I think anything should be looked at. if
It is
these
a
meetings are right up.
consideration, and that can be, that you can add that to Robert's rules is
Mhm.
the 2-bite rule has been there, but you can put a time frame on it as well. So if you don't, we can say, two bites and that you've had your time. If you want to add minutes to it, we could do that and these are all recommendations. The village board is still going to look at these.
I would definitely recommend the 2 bites. And then if that doesn't work, then I would move on to the time limitation, because we do tend to drone on about things that we should all be aware of. Either that or the lights simply go out at 9:30 and we all go home. That's my other.
I would just like to comment on that, piggyback on that. I've never heard of the 2-bite and I
Called
didn't.
2-bite, it's not called 2 bites, but you have 2 times to speak. You have 2 times
Yeah.
around the table to speak, and that's it. You can't do a third, a fourth, a fifth, and just continue on and filibuster.
Because
think-
It is a Robert's rule.
Okay. It is a Robert's rule. What do they call it though? It's not 2 bites, is it?
No,
But anyway, what I would just like, I think it's about the, keeping things moving. I agree. But wouldn't we be better served with a sergeant at arms?
No,
no, I don't think
no,
so.
I don't
No.
think
I
so.
think so.
Not at all. We can,
What would that person do?
yeah.
We'll make sure that everything is going
That's-
smoothly.
But that's the chair's responsibility.
That's our
maybe
president's
they-
responsibility, and he has to take that responsibility.
Well,
There, I said
Maybe-
it.
maybe there needs to be a little, the
Well, it'll be
next
in the
level.
minutes.
It needs to be at the next level
Yeah.
because I feel like that's how we get sidelined or derailed on some of the subjects or the way that we're making motions and amending them or stuff like that. Once in a while, we get a little goofed
Right.
up.
To me, this comes down to, instead of taking certain things out of Robert's rules, it's just the adherence to Robert's Rules of Order.
Right.
Bingo.
How about that?
Yeah. So we have our 2-bite rule.
Yes, and again, the chair is responsible for adhering to those rules. And if somebody is out of line or, saying something that is not adhered to Robert's rules, then you can raise a point of order, or he or she has to be able to curb that. But that was my first one, is adherence to Robert's Rules of Order.
I agree with that. Overall adherence.
Mhm.
How do we make these recommendations? I mean, do we vote on this and send it to the village board, or
I thought we'd come up with a list this month if we want to,
there's our
if
list?
we want to approve it, one item.
But I mean, if we did adhere to Robert's Rules of Order, I think these meetings would become much more professional
Right.
and much more streamlined, and people would be more prepared because nobody's going to want to hear you the third time. You have your opportunity to speak on a topic and to refute what somebody else speaks on that topic. And then, that's it.
I'm not sold on that because I've never seen it done.
Well, but it is Robert's Rules of Order.
Sorry.
Like I said last time, I mean, if you want to adhere to proper Robert's Rules of Order, you don't even start discussion until the motion is made.
Exactly.
And we do it in the opposite.
Sometimes.
Most of the
Sometimes we
time.
do, most of the time we do.
Yeah.
The other thing that came up in the last meeting, I believe, is preparation. Now, that's one you can't enforce because we're all trustees and we are supposed to be prepared for the meetings, but prep for the meetings is sometimes lacking. And we can recommend that to the village board and say, this is what we expect out of our trustees. This is the expectation, and just reiterate that.
I think that's great. That's a great idea.
There was, and I'm going to bring this up because trustee Hudson did, and that is the size of the board. We are one of 4 in Wisconsin that has 8 trustees. Everyone else has 6. And that has been touched upon in the past. However, it was really not considered at all. Trustee Kaminsky.
My problem with that, and I'd be happy to give up my seat, okay? But my problem with that is, look how many people are not always in attendance. I will miss the next meeting, for example. That would mean no representation for District 1. Or for the village itself for potentially voting on an important issue. That was my problem with when we were meeting after Labor Day on that Tuesday night. I said, don't bring anything important up, because I want as many people sitting up here in these chairs for important decisions.
Yeah.
To debate that decision and then to take a vote. So the problem, though, if you have that limited number, good luck getting quorum sometimes.
Well, the makeup changes though, and the committees would go down to 3 members with a quorum of 2. And I don't like that idea.
I don't like
Yeah.
that idea at all. That's way too few people
like-
making important decisions.
So
So
It's not like we're overpaid and we're bending the budget because we have 8 people here.
I think that that would be something to maybe discuss in 2025 before the 2026 election. But I don't think it pertains to shortening the village meetings as we are now, because we can't, I don't think we should just yank people. I don't think that's right.
Mhm.
So
So our recommendation is to remain the same size.
work with what we have, and then let's start at the very beginning and do the Robert's Rules of Orders and really adhere to it, come prepared, which leads me to getting the agendas early. Now,
Yeah.
that's what we would like.
So I know the village staff has been working in the last couple months to get those out on Thursday rather than Friday.
How's that going?
And we have, I think, there was one meeting where we weren't able to do that due to some staff illnesses, but other than that, we have been getting the agendas out on Thursday afternoon. And I think that's something that we can continue to do.
So that would be essentially 4 days prior
Yeah.
to a meeting,
That's plenty.
because there's Wednesday meetings. So I'm saying,
Yeah.
we don't want to say the Thursday prior to a meeting. We'd say number of days.
And just for clarification, if I may, trustee Miller,
Yes, please.
just so, I clearly want to understand, we were under the impression by myself and my staff, is that we were going to do this for meetings that occur on Mondays only. So any meetings that were occurring on Mondays only is where we were given that direction previously by the board was our assumption. And so I just want to clarify and confirm that today.
Well, typically, like, as an example, Public Works has been Wednesdays, but you've had the agendas out before the weekend on those. So that's way prior to 4 days.
I think it should be all or,
No, I don't think so. I'm happy with
Because
Village
it's-
Board. I really am. And GGF on the day it falls. I don't, boy, I don't have any issue with reading all this. Got it on Thursday. That's a wealth of time for me. And I'm not busy.
well, I happen to be really busy and it's nice to have it on Thursday. But it's, if that's what you're doing with some of the agendas, doesn't it make sense to have the agendas sent out at the same time frame? In other words, it might not be Thursday, but at least you're giving the same amount of time. Let's call Thursday, what is that, 4 days in advance? And then if it's the Wednesday, 4 days in advance. That's basically what you've been doing. I don't think we should just say agendas on, for the village board. I think all the committees are important.
If I could just
Yeah, go ahead.
add, I think if I could suggest that we do this for the village board and the 3 standing committees.
Right.
And I think that's something that's very doable for staff. When we have some of the other committees that meet they don't necessarily meet on a regular cycle, or sometimes staff isn't directly involved in the development of those agendas. So I think my suggestion would be to focus on those 3 main committees and the village board.
I guess we were assuming that, but you're right. We don't necessarily need to do it for Parks and Rec and.
Yeah, and those other departments, what the clerk's department has involved with that is that we make sure it's posted for them and published. But they're doing their own, as is library and other committees and commissions as well.
Preservation, I do.
Yep,
I feed you mine, so.
and you give me yours and we compile it. So I would read. I think that the standing committees, as Administrator correctly alluded to, that's the easiest.
Okay.
And we have been getting those out on Thursday, so I hope that you have seen a great difference in that and that it's been helpful.
Yeah, if it helps, I'm fine with it. It doesn't matter to me an extra day, but like Terry, but some people it does. So we'll add that as a recommendation. All right, to me, that's a pretty good list. Do we need anything else?
If for,
I do. So let me read the list again. Adhere to Robert's Rules of Order. Recommendation is to prepare for the meetings. Wouldn't be a recommendation, but we're going to recommend that the village board's size remain the same. And the last one is that the village board and 3 standing committee agendas will be out 4 days prior to the meeting. All right,
sounds great to me.
great. We make a motion to push that to village board.
I'll make a motion to move these for ideas for shortening village board meetings to the village board.
All right, any other discussion? We've had it before, so. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to item C, unfinished business, ARPA update.
Yep, in your packet is the monthly ARPA update. As you'll notice, all of the recommended projects have been approved and are on the first page. With the state of the current amount of projects, the amount remaining that's unallocated for specific projects is $28,215. The village board obviously can use this as part of the 2025 budget if there's specific things they'd like to use those funds for. In addition, the Axon body camera contract will go up with the additional police officers. If we wanted to allocate those funds to cover that increase, that's an option as well. But there is about $28,000 remaining to be allocated by the end of the year.
For those body camera, is that an annual contract with them?
It's a 5-year lease, I believe.
Your lease, okay.
This-
So it wouldn't be just a recurring bill. for this. It would be the addition of 4 cameras for the new officers.
Correct, correct. They'll
So,
be built into the existing lease.
so this is the one that you've got committed, 264,454?
Correct.
Excellent.
The Public Safety Committee and the Village Board originally allocated roughly $300-some thousand for the 5-year lease. That lease contract will go up due to the new additional officers. So if we wanted to just include that 28,000 into that contract, we could. Otherwise, once we get towards the end of that contract, we'll have to find a way to fund, 28,000 or so the last year of the contract.
Do you have to pay this by the month? What are we doing here? Are
It's an
these-
annual, it's a 5-year lease, but we pay once a year.
Oh, so is the total the 264? Or
That's
is
the
it-
total remaining. The total was the 264 plus the 66.
Oh, got it.
So
Okay,
roughly 330.
thank you.
What would be the cost of the addition?
That I am not sure of yet. I'll have to ask the chief. I'm not sure what the additional increase will be.
We're going to ask.
That was my question. I was wondering if are we going to cover it or are we coming close, Obviously, I think it's a good way to spend
And
money.
remind me again, this has to be allocated by the end of the year?
Correct, correct. And then it has to be spent by the end of 2026.
Obligated.
Yeah, obligated.
It's obligated.
Technical technical
Yep.
difference.
But if it costs another 100,000, we only have 28, maybe.
Correct. We'd have to come up with those funds towards the end of the lease contract. We'll have enough for the first several years of the lease
Yeah,
through ARPA funds, and then we'll have to come up with it towards the end.
Maybe there's something that we need for 28,000. Boom,
Correct, correct.
do it that way.
Okay.
We'll have this next month. Right.
Yeah, we don't necessarily need to do any action.
Nope.
tonight.
Have to.
All right, thank you. We will move on to new business. Item A, resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of not to exceed $2.790 million general obligation promissory notes series 2024B. I will move this to Administrator Krecklow.
Yeah, I'll start out and
Oh.
Matthew, you can jump in if you'd like.
Sorry, maybe it was.
No, sorry. Actually, and Phil Cosson from Ehlers will be at the village board meeting tonight to present the sale day reports. I did include the information in the packet here. But I'll give an overview of what this is. This is a borrowing for 2 projects. One was the Glenwood Park project, which was paid for by the water utility portion of that. The reason, and you may remember that a year ago, we issued what's called a reimbursement resolution, where the village board approved a reimbursement resolution for this project. Work did start a while back. We were pursuing or looking at the potential of using clean water fund loans for this. And ultimately, we learned that we were not approved for a clean water fund loan for this project. And that's something that the state issues, and it does have a lower interest rate than what we would pay by issuing our own debt. So that was why we didn't issue, as we normally would, the debt before the project started. The project is not over budget. It just is, there have been some issues with scheduling, and I know the residents in that area were not happy that the roads were not paved before school started. It is something that our public works staff is working with the contractors. I think that there's some things that we've learned in how the contracts are written to try to make sure that this issue doesn't happen again. But the project this is not debt that's being issued because the project is over budget. The second project that's included in here is the construction of High Point Pass, and that's the new road that will go from Holy Hill Road south to the railroad tracks, replacing what's currently a private drive for Holy Hill Storage. And this is related to the Truck Country project, as well as the proposed recreational trail along the north side of the railroad tracks on the property that we're transferring over from MMSD. And that debt service is paid out of Tax Increment District 8. So both of these issuances are paid for from other revenue sources other than the property tax levy. So there's no impact from this borrowing on the debt service levy. And as I mentioned, Mr. Cossin will be, going through more of a sales day report at the village board meeting this evening.
So this debt issuance is really because we're not going to borrow until we need it, right? I mean, as far as the sewer and all that was done at Glenwood Park
Right.
area.
Right, we normally this would have been included in the spring issuance, the Glenwood Park portion, but that one, at the time, we were looking at clean water fund loans, so we did not include it in
Waited.
the spring issuance. And then High Point Pass, we didn't have approval for the project in the spring issuance. And we do need to start construction on that in order to meet the timelines that are included in the development agreement with Truck Country that's been approved by the village board.
All right, committee? Trustee Jan Miller?
Thank you. When is the TID number 8 going to close now? There was an amendment to it. So what year are we talking about?
I don't have that off the top of my head. I could look that up probably if we have a few minutes in between meetings. And if you want to ask that question again at the village board meeting, I'll have the information then, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Will this delay it at all? I guess that's,
No, this is a project that was approved as part of the amendment to TID 8. And that's where I'll look for that information and the project plan that was approved by the village board, the joint review board, plan commission. And this is just issuing the debt for the project that was approved as part of that amendment.
so where are the railroad tracks?
There's railroad tracks that go from, there's an underpass on Interstate 41 just south of the Holy Hill interchange. And those railroad tracks go on a southeasterly direction. They cross Goldendale Road and then go just north of the JW Speaker property. And then come out on Maple and then cross Freistadt. Let me see what road that River Lane, I believe that would be where they cross Freistadt Road. And then they run parallel to the other set of tracks that go through the village.
Right.
From there, going further southeast.
Just because I have it in front of me, today it's projected to close in 2032. And that's from the today project plan, the amended one.
But we're just voting on the developers agreement.
No, this is
Or Truck Country?
the debt issuance.
Oh, that's
I
already
kn-
done.
It's to provide the cash to pay for the project that the board has approved.
And essentially what happened is we couldn't get that loan in the spring for the Glenwood,
Right.
but from the state.
Well, we could have, but we were looking at other funding options. And now that those fell through, we have to borrow for the project.
And we don't have any other options. This is it.
Correct. At this point, this is the best option we have.
Trustee Kaminsky.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the issuance and sale not to exceed 2.79 million in general obligation promissory notes.
I'll second. This is going to be on village board tonight, correct?
Yeah, and one of the things
This
with
is
that,
just a recommendation from GGF to move it to the village board.
I do apologize about that, and I think it kind of goes to maybe the previous discussion on shortening meetings. As staff, we're trying to avoid these situations where it's on a committee and the village board the same night. However, when we looked at the timing of the sale and the schedule that was put forward, we kind of got backed up into this situation. I think the Ehlers and other financial advisors are concerned about if we're issuing debt, we want to make sure that, that we have a sale date in early enough in October that other things that are happening the first week of November that may cause, controversy or disruption in things, that we're separated from that it doesn't affect our sale process. Then as we worked into the schedule, we needed to get it on the village board meeting tonight. So, we are trying to avoid that, though. We don't want to do that as a practice.
Yeah, we could have looked at this in September, probably.
Any other discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 2-1. And this is a recommendation to the board. Right. We will move on to item B, new business, fire department administrative managers pay. We have Chief Delane here.
Thank you. Currently, our administrative manager is in position 1 for her pay scale. I'm requesting to move her to position number 2. Over the course of the last few years, she has taken over a number of new duties that go far and above what she was originally hired for, including she coordinates all of our CPR training for the community that we provide to the businesses and everything like that. She is also one of the advisors for our Explorer program. In addition to that, she also acts as our liaison to our IT work, and she does handle a number of the IT work that she can within the fire station. Currently, the position 1 pay scale is $33,942 for a minimum and $53,666 for a max. And position number 2 is $45,869 as a minimum and $62,387 for a max. So we're just looking to move her into that number 2 position. Funding for this year, wherever she ends up in the middle of those, the money will come from a $177,000 grant I received for the remainder of this year and through budgeting for next year.
Okay, committee, trustee Kaminsky.
How long has the person been on staff?
She has been on staff for 7 years.
Mike.
Sorry. And I guess it would have helped me to look back at the job description of what she's doing now, to be honest with you. I'd like to see what she's doing now and how much this varies from that. And where is she at salary wise right now?
She is currently at $23.85 an hour, so $49,608.
And there's not enough room in what you said, position number 1?
Yeah, position number 1 maxed out at 53.
He's
So
not there,
he's
right?
not there yet, but as of the end of this year with her
Yeah.
performance evaluations, she will pretty much be topped out.
Okay. I guess for me personally, I need to see what she's responsible for now. Put that here, and here's what she's going to be responsible for, and then it makes sense, then I'm fine with it. But I just don't feel like I have enough information to say yes to that tonight. That's just me.
So you want a current job description, a new job description?
Yeah, I would. Like what's being added, what's she going to be held to do now that we're putting into position 2 from position 1? Let's just see what that's going to be. I need assurance that we're not just saying, you've taken on a couple more duties, you've asked me for a raise, because I live in this world. And I have to say, wait a minute, are these duties that would fall under the umbrella that you had before, scheduling things? Or are these duties that go beyond that take on more responsibility?
If I may add, she is not just scheduling those things, she is actually performing those
That's
things.
what I need to see, okay? Then that would be great, but I think I need to see me personally, I might be outvoted here. I need to see the personal job description of what she was hired to do versus what now we currently have her doing, and then I'd be fine with it, I'm sure.
And I would like to know what you what you anticipate that incremental difference would be. Right? I mean, is
Definitely,
it,
yeah.
yeah, are we talking 5,000?
So we're looking at moving her to 26, 25 an hour.
Which is,
So it's about $3 an hour more. 6,000.
so the increase would be about 6,000.
That's correct.
And then you're taking that out of this, would you start that immediately or what are we talking?
I would like to start this year yet, and that would, the remainder of this year will be getting taken out of a grant that we had received.
Yep,
And this is one of the qualified uses of the grant.
sure,
And the remainder would be as part of the budgeting for next year.
for 2025.
Correct.
So I think it's reasonable to ask for the new job description and include all that. One of the things that we can consider if you really want to move it back is to make it retroactive. But I think a new job description would be in order here to
Yep.
see what the differences in the duties are, because we're moving her up a pay position.
Sure.
It's not just an increase in salary, but a pay position, so.
And maybe there is already a different job description for position 1 and 2, is there?
Well, each one's specific to every department. So there's not just,
Is it fair to say that she's been so good that she's migrated into additional duties? Because that's what it seems like to me.
that's 100% what's happened.
Mhm.
Okay,
In addition to that, she has seen changes happen at Village Hall to people who have significantly less time on than her, who are now making more than her, in
Oh,
addition
So we have
to
some
looking
Yeah.
at leaving the
disparity.
department.
If I could just add, I think part of what has happened with this position is it's not only that the individual's been doing a great job. It's also the department has changed a lot over the past 7 years. So, for example, this position is responsible for timekeeping and works very closely with our payroll administrator
Sure.
here in Village Hall. And fire department, especially now on a full-time basis, has the most complicated payroll function that we have in the village. And she's done an excellent job of kind of keeping that system straight and working with the payroll administrator to make sure that we're accurately paying our firefighters, which is not an easy task.
Sure. Trustee Kaminsky.
I would think within 7 years, she's probably done a great job and really moved herself up. Let's just see that so we can compare it side by side, because as we heard from people earlier, as well as I'm sure other people out there who are watching, we have to be sure that what we're doing is correct and that this money is being well spent. I always hate seeing salaries coming out of a grant, because that's not going to be reoccurring.
Mhm.
We have no idea what our budget's going to be next year, so that's a caveat as well, that, oh, Terry doesn't like that. You got to figure out where that money's going to come from, in the future. Not just come to us and say, oh, here,
I may not be able to find a prior job description. She was hired by my predecessor, and those records,
wouldn't we have something, Steve,
he
somewhere?
purged a lot of
Village
records.
Hall? I
You know,
would hope.
we'll work with the fire chief on this.
Yeah.
I believe we do. I think that the support services manager has a job description.
I would like to see that original, otherwise I'm really playing smoke and mirrors here.
but we can certainly, I think, do a retroactive.
I would entertain a motion to postpone until we see the job descriptions. Bring this in.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion?
Meeting, right?
Until the next meeting.
Not infinitely.
In October or September, right? Thanks.
I don't know. Summer's a blur. So October. Okay. So we have a motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are down to reports. Accounts payable reports. Any questions? I think it worked pretty well last month, that if there were any questions that we can provide those via email or with staff.
Yeah, if I could just make a couple comments just on accounts payable in general. Our current accounts payable clerk has left the village for personal reasons, so we're currently in the process of hiring a new accounts payable clerk. We have a couple interviews this week, and we're hoping to have somebody on starting within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Just so that, because it's such a vital position, making sure invoices get paid in a timely manner, and working with vendors to make sure things don't get lost between, when we receive an invoice to when we cut a check to mailing that check out to vendors. So there'll be some small changes in accounts payable, but we're looking forward to getting somebody on as soon as we can.
Good to
In
know.
the meantime, you're managing.
Yeah, who's doing the
I've been
work?
do-
Is it distributed?
I've been doing the accounts payable for about the last month, or as much as I can. You'll see if you look in the packet, there's about a check run every 3 days. I just do them as I can to make sure I don't get behind.
About that.
Yeah, yeah. And then the new DPW admin assistant has also been working in Munis to do some accounts payable on the DPW side, and she's been wonderful so far. So it's nice to have somebody over there that can take a little bit of the load off.
Oh, good. All right, we'll move on to the year-to-date budget or budget to actual. We've got this in 2 flavors, one in the packet that's included, and also we're provided an Excel spreadsheet this week, so.
Yep. Overall, looks like revenues and expenses are tracking as planned. The biggest variable we typically see year to year are permit revenues, but they seem to be on track. They might come in slightly under than what we had budgeted, just depending on the amount of new buildings or new construction going on within the village. On the expense side, the biggest expenses are typically salary and benefits. We're tracking pretty well there. Police overtime is projecting to come in right around budget, maybe slightly under budget. Fire overtime is likely to come in over budget, just given the number of calls that they've had this year so far. But we think that's something we'll be able to manage within the budget.
We haven't had a separate healthcare report in a while, but is that tracking pretty well?
The health fund?
The health fund, yeah.
Yep. I don't believe I have it. It's likely in here. The numbers probably aren't great because we tend to do journals every couple months for them. But I know the health fund ended with a surplus in 2023 of about around $400,000, which is great. Just given prior to where I'd started, there'd been a slight drawdown every year on the fund balance of that due to some plan changes made by administration. We've been able to build up a little surplus there in the event that we do have a bad year, that we have a cushion there to cover some of those additional costs.
Good, thanks. Any other questions? We'll move on to, what's the next one? Payroll. Any questions on payroll? It's pretty straightforward.
Can't change that.
And then the last one, contracts. Contracts are also provided in here and on a spreadsheet that was emailed.
Yep. One thing I'd like to do with contracts, and this is probably more internal than for GGF, but just want to make you aware, is that we should get on a more regular schedule of checking kind of the progress of contracts to make sure things are getting lost and not being tied back to contracts. So looking at some of those earlier contracts, and if you don't see a lot of activity on those contracts, that an invoice was likely paid not against that contract, and making that correction. So that's something that I would like to have certainly my department take a closer look at, just to make sure that invoices are being properly tied back to contracts to accurately reflect where we are in that contract.
I can tell you, I've never seen so many contracts.
Yeah.
In all the
And the-
years we've had, so I can tell that Tyler Munis is a benefit in that aspect.
Yeah, and a lot of credit to the departments. They've been doing a great job of getting their contracts entered in there, putting in approved dates and things like that, having digital copies of the contract, so it makes it easier for the reporting on our end, certainly.
Is there anything that you do with the, like the vendor number to signal that they have a contract, or how do you know?
Not with the vendor number. On the invoice, typically there is a contract number, so that's how I know that that invoice is related to. Yeah, so most invoices have a PO number or contract number. So what we've been doing is having the vendor put that number on the invoice. So when it comes to Village Hall or to DPW, that we can look at that invoice and know it's for a contract.
Right.
And then, just typically if we see larger invoices, just double checking that they're tied to a contract, as we would expect, a large invoice to have some contract related to it, not just a random, $20,000 invoice for some service.
All right, anything else on contracts? If not, we've went through all the agenda items. We're looking at our next meeting, which would be the third week of October, the October 21st. Is that okay with everybody? We'll do it at 5:30.
At 5:30.
That
For
work?
me.
I think that's the latest we can have it. So, good. So we've gone through the entire agenda, so we will adjourn at 6:36 PM. Thank you.
Thank you.